My name is Daniel Hayes, and I am 31 years old. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, but moved to Pittsburgh a few years ago for work. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of an old brick building. It is not the nicest place, but it is affordable and close to my job at a local warehouse. My apartment has thin walls, creaky floors, and windows that face a narrow alley where almost no sunlight enters. Still, it feels like home most days. For most of my life, I have been a normal sleeper. I would go to bed, maybe toss and turn a little, and wake up like everyone else. I had the occasional nightmare, but nothing unusual. That changed about a year ago. It started with one strange night that I thought was a dream, but it turned out to be something I had never experienced before. I only learned the name of it later: sleep paralysis. It happened on a rainy October night. I had been working a late shift at the warehouse and returned home around midnight. My body was tired, but my mind was restless. I had some leftovers for dinner, watched a little television, and finally turned off the lights around 2 a.m. I remember lying on my bed in complete darkness, listening to the rain tapping on the window. At first, sleep came easily. I drifted away, sinking into that heavy, peaceful feeling where the world fades. But then something unusual happened. I woke up, or at least I thought I did. My eyes opened, and I was staring at the ceiling of my room. The dim orange glow from the street light outside leaked through the blinds, painting faint lines across the walls. Everything looked exactly like it should have. My dresser was in the corner, my coat hanging on the chair, and the door closed as always. Yet, I immediately realized something was wrong. I could not move, not even a finger. It was as if my body had been strapped down by invisible ropes. I tried to turn my head, but my neck refused. I wanted to sit up, but my chest felt heavy, like someone was pressing down on me with both hands. Panic rose in my throat as I struggled to breathe. My heart was pounding, but no sound came out of my mouth. I was trapped. At first, I thought I was still dreaming, but the room was too real. I could see the small details that dreams never capture. The faint crack in the ceiling paint, the pile of unfolded laundry on the floor, the reflection of the alarm clock digits against the wall. This was my room exactly as it was, yet I was locked inside my own body. That was when I noticed the corner. Across the room, in the darkest part where the shadows pooled, something was standing. It was not there before. At first, it looked like the shadow of my coat hanging on the chair, but as my eyes focused, I realized it was taller, wider, and shaped like a person. It was completely black, darker than the rest of the room, like a hole cut out of reality. I could not see eyes, but I felt its gaze drilling into me. Every part of me screamed to move, to run, to do anything, but I could only stare. The shadow shifted. Slowly, almost lazily, it began to slide along the wall toward me. The soundless movement made my skin crawl. My breath quickened, but my chest was too heavy to fill my lungs properly. My body was still frozen, useless. When it reached the foot of my bed, I could see its outline more clearly. It had long, thin arms that seemed to stretch farther than normal. Its head was tilted, as if it were studying me. I wanted to close my eyes, but even my eyelids refused to obey. I was forced to watch as it crept closer. Then it leaned over me, the shape bent forward, its face hovering just above mine. Though it had no features, I could feel something radiating from it, an overwhelming sense of hatred and hunger. The air grew colder. My ears filled with a low vibration, like a deep hum inside my skull. My chest burned as if I were suffocating under its weight. I thought I was going to die right there in my bed, unable to scream, unable to fight, just a prisoner in my own body while something inhuman studied me. The shadow lowered further until its head was almost touching mine. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything snapped. I could move again. I bolted upright in bed, gasping for air, clutching my chest. The room was empty. My coat still hung on the chair. The corner was just shadows again. I stumbled to the light switch, flicked it on, and stood there shaking with sweat dripping down my forehead. It felt so real, too real. I spent the rest of the night sitting in my chair with every light on, too afraid to close my eyes. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was a dream, but it kept happening. At least once a week after that night, I would wake up trapped in my body, unable to move. Sometimes the shadow figure was in the corner. Sometimes it was sitting on the edge of my bed. Once, I swore I felt its fingers brush across my arm as if testing my skin. Every time, I was frozen, forced to endure the horror until my body finally broke free. I stopped sleeping normally. I dreaded going to bed. My health began to slip because I was always exhausted at work. I tried to read about what was happening, and I learned the term sleep paralysis. The articles described it as a harmless condition where your body remains in a dream state while your mind wakes up. But what they did not explain was the presence. That shadow, that hatred pressing against me. That part was not in the medical descriptions. One night in December, it became worse than ever. I had fallen asleep earlier than usual because I was too tired to fight it anymore. The next thing I knew, I was awake in the darkness, locked in paralysis again. The shadow was not in the corner this time. It was already on top of me. Its weight crushed me into the mattress. I could feel its entire body pressing against mine like ice-cold stone. My eyes rolled frantically, searching for escape, but the creature's faceless head was directly above mine, closer than ever before. Then, for the first time, I felt something new. A hand. Its long, thin fingers wrapped around my throat. They were icy, sharper than bones. I could feel pressure closing my airway. My vision blurred as panic overwhelmed me. My heart hammered violently, and for a moment, I was certain this was how I would die, strangled by something that should not exist. But just before darkness claimed me, my body released again. I shot up coughing and clutching my neck. My skin tingled where the fingers had been, like frostbite. I ran to the bathroom and flipped on the light. My throat had faint red marks circling it. I stood there staring at my reflection, knowing I could not deny it anymore. Something was real. Something was coming into my room at night, using the paralysis to torment me. Since that night, I live in constant fear. I dread the darkness. I dread lying down. Even now, months later, the episodes return, though not every night. Sometimes weeks go by with peace, and I start to believe it is over. Then suddenly it comes again. The weight, the frozen body, and the black shape watching me with invisible eyes. I do not tell people about it anymore. When I mentioned it once at work, they laughed and said it was just nightmares. But I know better. This is not a trick of the mind. This is something that uses the paralysis to reach me. I feel it feeding on my fear. I do not know how long I can endure it. I stay up late. I sleep with lights on. I play music to keep my mind distracted. But it always finds a way back. And every time, it gets closer, stronger, heavier. I fear that one night, I will not wake up. One night, it will keep me trapped forever. That is why I am telling this now. If anyone finds me in my bed one day, lifeless, but without explanation, know this. It was not just sleep paralysis. It was the shadow that has been haunting me, waiting patiently for the moment I can no longer break free. And I feel that moment coming soon. I have lived most of my life in small towns, moving from one rented place to another. A few years ago, I rented a cheap apartment on the edge of a city in Ohio. The building was old, built sometime in the 1960s, and everything about it felt tired. The walls carried stains that never washed away. The carpet in the hallway smelled faintly of mold, and the buzzing lights above flickered on and off without warning. Still, it was all I could afford at that time, so I accepted it. My apartment was on the second floor, facing the back alley where no sunlight ever touched the windows. During the day, it was quiet, and at night, it felt too quiet, almost unnaturally so. When I moved in, sleep came normally for the first few weeks. I would lie down after a long day of work, and my body would give in without much resistance. But then it began, the strange episodes that have followed me since. At first, I thought they were nightmares, but soon I realized they were something more sinister. The first time it happened, I woke up in the middle of the night, lying flat on my back. My eyes were open, and the room was familiar. The dresser, the small desk against the wall, the faint glow of the alarm clock. But I quickly realized that I could not move. Not a single muscle obeyed me. My chest felt as if a heavy block of stone had been placed upon it. I tried to cry out, but my mouth stayed sealed. The air in the room seemed thicker, heavier, pressing down from every corner. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. In the hallway beyond my open bedroom door, something stood. At first, it looked like a tall figure, darker than the shadows around it. But then there were more. 2, 3, then 4. All of them lined up in silence, peering into my room. They had no faces, only smooth, pale surfaces where their eyes should have been, and yet I knew they were staring directly at me. The fear that gripped me in that moment was unlike anything I had ever known. My body strained against the invisible chains, but nothing gave way. The figures in the hallway did not move closer. They only stood there, heads tilted slightly, watching. After what felt like an eternity, my body broke free. I sat up gasping, sweat running down my skin, and the hallway was empty. The silence was back, heavier than ever. I kept the door shut after that, but shutting the door did not stop them. Over the next weeks, the paralysis returned again and again. Sometimes it was one figure standing inside the room near the closet. Sometimes it was several, crouched low to the floor like animals ready to spring. I would wake frozen, helpless, my mind screaming while my body betrayed me. The worst night came in January. The air outside was freezing, and the radiator in my apartment had stopped working. I remember going to bed wearing 2 sweaters and wrapping myself under layers of blankets. Sleep came quickly because I was so tired, but sometime during the night, I opened my eyes again. My body was stiff and locked. My breath came in shallow bursts. The room looked darker than usual, as if the air itself had thickened into shadows. And they were there again. Not in the hallway this time, not at the closet. They were standing right beside my bed. I could see them clearly now, because the streetlight outside painted faint lines of light across their shapes. They were tall, impossibly tall, their heads nearly brushing the ceiling. Their bodies looked thin and stretched, with arms that hung down past their knees. And though their faces had no features, I could feel eyes drilling into me, hundreds of eyes, as if every inch of their skin was covered in invisible sight. One leaned down until its faceless head hovered just above mine. My lungs fought for air, but my chest barely moved. The weight of its stare pressed so deeply into me that my ribs ached. I could feel something cold brushing against my forehead, like invisible fingers searching beneath my skin. Then the others joined. They leaned over, surrounding my bed, faceless heads bent close, their heavy presence crushing me flat. The room vibrated faintly, like a deep humming that rattled inside my skull. My vision began to blur. For a moment, I thought I would never wake again. I thought they were pulling something from me, some part of myself that I could not see. And then release. I sat up with a violent jolt, sucking air into my chest like a drowning man. The room was empty, the walls silent, my blankets tangled in knots around my body, but my forehead was ice cold, and the sensation of invisible fingers lingered there long after. From that night on, I kept the lights on. I even moved my bed against the wall, hoping it would give me some sense of protection, but it did not matter. The paralysis returned. The faceless beings came back. Sometimes it was only one, sometimes a crowd, and sometimes, even when I was not trapped in paralysis, I would wake in the dark and feel the heavy sensation of being watched. I know what doctors say. I know they call it a trick of the brain, a condition where dreams spill into reality. But that explanation does not account for the feeling of cold fingers brushing against my skin, or the echo of countless invisible eyes piercing me in the silence. Every time I sleep, I wonder if this will be the night they finally take something I cannot get back. And that thought terrifies me more than the paralysis itself. I try not to think about it during the day, but night always comes. The quiet hours always return. And I know, behind the thin wall of sleep, they're waiting in the hallway, faceless and patient, watching, always watching. I never used to be afraid of sleep. For most of my life, I thought of it as simple, natural, a place to rest after long days. But everything changed after I moved into a basement apartment on the outskirts of Chicago. It was a cheap place, with concrete floors covered by thin carpet and one small window that barely let in any light. I thought it would be temporary, just until I could save enough money for something better. That basement changed me. The first nights there, I noticed how heavy the air felt when I tried to sleep. It was always damp, as if the walls sweated at night. The ceiling pipes groaned sometimes, and faint footsteps from the people above would echo down into the dark. I thought I would get used to it. Instead, it grew worse. The first episode came about 2 weeks after I moved in. I had stayed up late reading, then finally laid down around 1 a.m. I remember falling into a dreamless sleep, but at some point, my eyes opened. My room was perfectly clear, lit only by the weak yellow glow from the street lamp outside. I could see my desk, the pile of clothes on the chair, the door slightly cracked open, but I could not move. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. Then the panic came. My chest felt locked, as if something heavy had pinned me down. I tried to shout, but my lips were frozen. I could only stare upward, my eyes darting wildly in the dark. That was when I noticed it. Something was crouched on top of me. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but then I saw the shape more clearly. It was small but dense, like a figure hunched low on my chest. Its limbs were long and thin, bent at strange angles. Its head was too large for its body, with strands of hair hanging in front of where a face should have been. I could not see its features, only darkness, but I felt it staring straight into me. The weight grew heavier. My ribs screamed as if they were being crushed. My lungs burned. I tried to fight, to push it off, but my body was stone. My heart raced so hard I thought it would break. Then the thing leaned closer, lowering its head until the strands of hair brushed against my chin. I felt cold breath against my throat. Every nerve in my body screamed, but I could not move. I thought I was going to suffocate right there, pinned in my bed by something that should not exist. Then, without warning, my body snapped free. I shot upright, gasping, clutching my chest. The weight was gone. The room was empty again. I tried to tell myself it was just a dream, but deep inside I knew it was not. The episodes continued. Sometimes the figure sat at the end of my bed, watching me with its faceless head tilted to the side. Other times, it crouched by the wall, waiting, patient, until I woke frozen again. The worst moments were when I felt it touch me, a cold finger dragging across my arm, hair brushing against my cheek, pressure digging into my stomach as if it were climbing deeper inside me. One night, I woke in the paralysis to find it not on top of me, but standing near the ceiling, its long limbs bent backwards, its head twisted around in an impossible angle. It was clinging to the concrete above me like a spider, watching with invisible eyes. My body screamed silently while I stared upward, knowing it was not a dream. It got worse when I started seeing it outside of sleep. One evening, I was brushing my teeth, staring into the mirror above the small sink. Behind me, for the briefest second, I saw the shape crouched in the corner of the bathroom. I spun around, but the corner was empty. Another night, as I turned off the television, the reflection on the black screen showed something moving across the wall, though the room itself was still. I stopped inviting people over. I stopped sleeping with the door cracked. I left the lights on every night, but even that did not stop it. The last episode one experienced in that basement is burned into me forever. It was February, the middle of winter, when the nights felt colder than death. I had wrapped myself in 2 blankets, hoping for some rest. At some point in the night, I woke again, paralyzed. My body was locked, my breath shallow, my eyes wide with terror before I even saw it. It was already there. Not on my chest this time, not in the corner, but inches away from my face. Its head hung over me, strands of greasy hair brushing against my forehead. I could smell something rotten, like soil mixed with mold, coming from its breath. My chest tightened as its weight pressed harder than ever before. The darkness of its body seemed to spread outward, swallowing the room until only its face hovered above me. For the first time, I saw its mouth. It stretched open, impossibly wide, revealing not teeth but a void, a black hole where light disappeared. And from that hole came a soundless pull, a suction that dragged at my chest, my throat, even my thoughts. I felt my body being pulled into that emptiness, piece by piece, while my lungs collapsed and my heart staggered under the pressure. I was sure that was the end. I was sure I would never wake again. But at the very last moment, I broke free. My body snapped upward, gasping, clutching my chest as if I had just been dragged from underwater. The room was still. The shadows clung to the corners. But I was alive. I left that basement within a week. I packed everything into bags and moved into a small place on the other side of the city. I told myself it would stay behind, trapped in those damp walls. But sometimes, even now, I wake frozen in my bed, unable to move, unable to breathe, and I feel the weight pressing against me. I know it is not gone. It follows. And one night, when my body does not break free, I know it will finally take me into that dark mouth that waits patiently, always waiting for the moment my strength runs out.